Today is the disappearance day of Saranga Murari Thakur, so we're going to sing the prayers of the departed Vaishnavas. Jaya Nilo Premadana Koruna Prachur Jaya Nilo Premadana Koruna Prachur Premadana Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur Bolo Bolo Kahamura Swarup Rupa Kahasanatan Swarup Rupa Kahasanatan Kahamura Swarup Rupa Kahasanatan I'll do that one. Kahamura Swarup Rupa Kahasanatan Kahadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamura Bhatta Yuga Kaha Kavira Eka Kale Kota Gele Goranatara Pasane Kutibo Mata Anale Pasibo Mata Anale Pasibo Goranga Gudera Nidi Kota Gele Pabo Se sangha sangira sange ye koilo bila Se sangana paya kande narotamada Nilo Prema Dana Koruna Prachur Madana Koruna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur Gela Charya Thakur Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Satarya Satishi Mara Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sikosha Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Ki Non-founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Chamuna Mayi Ki Ganga Mayi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shri Radha Golokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. He who has brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy. Where is such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where is my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where is my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Chaitanya, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das Thakur simply weeps. So, on the calendar, Sri Sangha Murari Thakur's disappearance day. And it's described that he used to live, there's a little bit about him in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And he used to reside at Modram Dweep, Magachi, where his deities of Sri Radha Gopinath are still present. There is also a bakul tree, which is perhaps existing since the time of Saranga Thakur. There is a local legend concerning this tree. One day when Mahaprabhu came there, he noticed that the bakul tree in the courtyard of Saranga's temple was dying. So yes, Saranga, this bakul tree is dying. So what are you going to do? Saranga Thakur replied, besides your mercy, Prabhu, I don't see any hope for this tree. Then Mahaprabhu embraced that tree, which has remained healthy to this day and is now quite large. Saranga Thakur has resolved that he would not accept any disciples but Mahaprabhu. Nevertheless, repeatedly requested him to do so. Finally, he relented and agreed by saying, tomorrow morning, the first person I see, I will initiate him by divine mantra. The next day, in the early morning, he went to take his bath in the Ganges. By chance, a dead body came and touched his feet as he entered the water. Picking up his dead body, he said, who are you? Get up. From behind, Mahaprabhu, who was witnessing everything, called out, Saranga, say the mantra in his ear. Then Saranga said the mantra into the ear of the dead child. The body became conscious. He said, my name is Murari. I am your servant. Please bestow your mercy upon me. On the day that this boy was to be invested with the sacred thread, he was by chance bitten by a snake and died. As he was only a boy, the custom was not to burn the body, but rather to place it on a raft of banana trees and float it down the Ganga. When his parents received the news that their child was alive, they came there to take him home. However, Murari declined to accompany them to his former home. He told them, I will remain in the service of he who has given me life again, for I am indebted to him. Ranamadas Thakur has described this, Sri Sangha Murari Thakur, as follows. There was an external consciousness present in Chaitanya Dasa's transcendental body. He would enter into the forest just to chase tigers. Sometimes he would jump on the back of a tiger, who by his influence remained inert. At other times he would put a python on his lap and play with great delight. It was by the mercy of Avadut Mahasya, Nityananda Prabhu, that he was able to play in this way with tigers and snakes. Sri Nityananda Roy is very affectionate to his service. And thus, by a simple wink of his eye, they were able to enjoy mellows which were not even accessible to Lord Brahma. Sri Sranga Murari Thakur was constantly in forgetfulness of himself, absorbed as he was in the bliss of speaking his inner thoughts. Sometimes he would remain within the water for 2 or 3 days without suffering any bodily inconvenience. He appeared to be almost insentient, and therefore his activities were imperceivable. Such was the fierce intensity of his immeasurable prowess. How can I describe the interminable transformations of his devotional sentiments? This is from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Anjalita chapter 5. The descendants of his family are still residing at Srigam in Bardhaman district. According to the Gaura Ganades Dipika, text 172, Saranga Thakur was previously Nandi Mukti in Braj Leela. Says the appearance day was on the 14th day of the dark fortnight of the month of Asar. His distant appearance is on the 13th day of the dark fortnight of the month of Raghayan, November, December. So, Sri Saranga Murari Thakur Ki Jai. Okay, so we're going to start a new chapter today in Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're chapter 11, the expansions of Lord Nityananda. The summary of the branches and sub-branches of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were described in the 10th chapter. This 11th chapter, the branches and sub-branches of Sri Nityananda Prabhu are similarly listed. So we're going to get descriptions of his associates. A lot of these were with him in Navadvip when he left by the order of Lord Chaitanya to go preach. Text 1. After offering my obeisances unto all the devotees of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who are like bumblebees collecting honey from his lotus feet, I shall try to describe those who are the most prominent. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone who has taken shelter at his lotus feet is glorious. All glories to Sri Advaita Prabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is the topmost branch of the indestructible tree of eternal love of Godhead. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I offer my respectful obeisances to all the sub-branches of that topmost branch. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is an extremely heavy branch of the Chaitanya tree. From that branch grow many branches and sub-branches. Watered by the desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, these branches and sub-branches have grown unlimitedly and covered the entire world with fruits and flowers. And Prabhupada actually said that ISKCON is a branch of this tree also. The branches and sub-branches of devotees are innumerable and unlimited. Who can count them? For my personal purification, I shall try to enumerate only the most prominent among them. One should not write books or essays or transcendental subject matter for material name, fame, profit. Transcendental literature is the purport, I'm sorry. One should not write books or essays on transcendental subject matter or material name, fame, or profit. Transcendental literature must be written under the direction of a superior authority because it is not meant for material purposes. If one tries to write under the superior authority, he becomes purified. All Krishna conscious activities should be undertaken for personal purification, not for material gain. Oh my God, Vitamrandasya. Shalakaya Chakshurami Tamini my Sri Gurave Namaha. Especially in the beginning, this personal purification is what compels us to move forward in our practice of Krishna consciousness. It's the purification is actually the spiritual consciousness that we develop. That is the purification. It's the amount of bhakti that we accumulate and credit in our daily activities. When we engage in these spiritual activities that purify us, these are actually activities of bhakti, which is ultimately what we want to emulate, and also we want to spread. Just by engaging in bhakti yoga, then we become purified. It's like when we had this, of course they don't have it this year or last year, that sadhu sangha where they had all the big kirtan. So it's really kind of nice because you got a huge amount of people. But for me personally, I go there and you have all these really nice kirtan leaders and they have their signature tunes that they all are known for. But to sit there, for me to go, that's not for me the big attraction. The attraction for me is to hear all the responses by the thousands of devotees that are sitting. And you got all that accumulated bhakti that all these devotees, to whatever degree they all have, but you add it all up, and then you get this purification from the bhakti that they're emanating. And so our practices, when we engage in service, and we do bhakti, when we to whatever level we're at, when we're singing, performing devotional service, even giving a class to whatever level of bhakti, that's what we're emulating, and that's what we're spreading, and that's what we want. That's the association we want to seek out. Where do we get that bhakti? And those individuals who are practicing the bhakti, and those individuals who have different levels of bhakti, to that degree, if you associate with them, you'll get what they got. So, these are the different activities. This is what we want to get from these Krishna conscious activities, with the goal of wanting to be able to also perform bhakti and reciprocate. So text number 8. After Nityananda Prabhu, the greatest branch, Virabhadra Gosai, who also has innumerable branches and sub-branches, it is not possible to describe them. Purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, Virabhadra Gosai was the direct son of Srila Nityananda Prabhu and a disciple of Jahnavi Devi. His real mother was Vasudha. In the Gaura Ganades Dipika 67, he is mentioned as an incarnation of Shirnakshay Vishnu. Therefore, Virabhadra Gosai is non-different from Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In a village of the name Jamatatpura in the district of Hooghly, Virabhadra Gosai was a disciple of Yadunacharya, who had two daughters, a real daughter named Srimati and a foster daughter named Narayani. Both these daughters married, and they are mentioned in the Bhakti Ratnakara 13th wave. Virabhadra Gosai has three disciples who are celebrated as his sons, Gopigan, Vallabha, Ramakrishna, and Ramachandra. The youngest, Ramachandra, belonged to the Sandilya dynasty and had a surname Vattavalya. He established his family at Kandadaha, and his members are known as Goswamis of Kandadaha. The eldest disciple, Gopigan Vallabha, was the resident of a village known as Lata near the Mandakar railway station in the district of Burwan. The second, Ramakrishna, lived near Daha, in a village named Gayeshpura. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur notes that since these three disciples belonged to different gotras or dynasties and also had different surnames and lived in different places, it is not possible to accept them as real sons of Virabhadra Gosai. Ramachandra had four sons, of whom the eldest was Ramamadeva, whose third son was named Yadavindra. Yadavindra's son was Nanda Kishore, and his son was Nidhi Krishna. His son was Chaitanya Chanda, and his son was Krishna Mohan. His son was Jagan Mohan. His son was Rajanath, and his son was Shamala Goswami. This is the genealogical table given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for the descendants of Virabhadra Gosai. And Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada also gave us our disciplic succession that you see in the Bhagavad Gita. He's the one that also gave us that succession. It is primarily Diksha line of spiritual masters. But pretty much all this information here is coming from the Bhakti Ratnakara, which is a book that's available, and it picks up after Lord Chaitanya leaves, and then talks about the activities of the Goswamis, and then goes even further into some of the second generation and third generation Goswamis. So you have a lot in there about Jahnavi and a lot of information about Virabhadra Goswami. So a lot of those pastimes you'll find in that book. Text number 9. Although Virabhadra Goswami was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he presented himself as a great devotee. And although the Supreme Godhead is transcendental to all Vedic instructions, he strictly followed the Vedic literatures. So his Lord Chaitanya also didn't want to reveal who he was. He came as a devotee. And there's the story of the Chaitanya Bhagavatam where the devotees were having kirtan, not with Lord Chaitanya, but they were glorifying Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so typically the day, Lord Chaitanya would chant 64 rounds every single day. And you'd have all those rounds done by noon. And then at noon he would do his activity. He'd take his bath, and then they'd take prasadam. And then the devotees would come, and they would generally all take prasadam together. So this particular time when the devotees came, Lord Chaitanya was asking them about what they were doing before they came here. Well, who were y'all singing about, and what were you... Because he didn't like it that the devotees were glorifying him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so at this point, there were a lot of devotees that visiting, yearly from Navadvip. And so Srivas, he just goes like this. You know, he typically does these gestures. So Lord Chaitanya says, what does that mean? You know, it's not a normal mudra, you know. And similarly, when he asked Srivas Thakur, so how do you maintain yourself? I see you every day. He was living in Navadvip. How do you maintain yourself? I never see you go to work. I never see you go. And he just goes, that was his answer. So he communicates with the Lord. What does that mean, you know? He said, well, in 3 days, if there's nothing for me to eat here, I'll go drown myself in the Ganges. But this particular time, he held his hands up and he said, the Lord says, there's no way that we can hide who you are. It's like trying to hide the sun with your hands. You might be able to block the sun, but the rays are spread everywhere. So it's impossible to not to glorify you. It's impossible for you to hide who you are. So, but so the devotees all wanted Lord Chaitanya to come to their house and eat. You know, they always want to offer extended invitations. But the Lord said, I won't eat in anybody's house who's not a Lakeshvara. And Lakeshvara, a lakh is 100,000, and Ishvara means master. Now, on a common use of the word, a Lakeshvara is like one who possesses 100,000 rupees. But from Lord Chaitanya's point of view, the wealth of a Lakeshvara is one who's mastered chanting 64 rounds. So he said, I'm not going to eat in anyone's house or accept anything who's not chanting 164 rounds a day. So, in this way, he would induce the people to elevate their spiritual practice, you know, to bring them up to a particular standard. He would encourage it in that way. Of course, a lot of these individuals didn't have anything. A lot of them were renunciates. They had, you know, their daily activities. It's very much easy. They didn't have to manage temples and these other types of activities. They just had, you know, look after their sadhana. So it was actually pretty easy. But like I said, Lord Chaitanya would have it done by noon every day. He described he took a tulsi. We have our whole tulsi program going here at our greenhouse and trying to always take care of tulsi nicely. And he described that Lord Chaitanya, he planted a tulsi, and then he would take that tulsi everywhere he chanted. Somebody would carry that tulsi, and he would, wherever he went to chant his mantras, he would chant it in front of that tulsi. So one day, after Lord Chaitanya made this announcement, Advaita Acharya wanted him to come to his house and eat. But Advaita Acharya didn't want anybody else to come. And the primary reason was because he's a sannyasi, he had to, you know, didn't want to eat too much in front of other individuals. He had to manage, you know. And so Advaita Acharya said he didn't want him to do that. When he wanted him to come and eat, he wanted him to be able to, you know, serve him huge quantities of prasadam and take unlimitedly. So he had a desire like this. So Lord Chaitanya had finished his rounds and gone to take his bath, and he accepted the invitation of Advaita Acharya. So then there was because of the desire of Advaita Acharya, there was a rainstorm came. And not just a rainstorm, but also some hail came. So everybody was taking shelter everywhere, except for Lord Chaitanya. It was wherever he was not really, it was like very misty, you know. So he was able to come to Advaita Acharya's house by himself. And when he came there, Advaita Acharya had cooked unlimitedly, him and his wife, and there were mounds of rice and just so many different types of prasadam. It's described it. Not prasadam, it was being offered to the Lord. All kinds of this bhoga was cooked, and so Lord Chaitanya was able to take. Of course, he see this, and he said, "Who's all this for?" You know, and he said, Lord Advaita said, "This is all for you." So this is the the bhakti that these devotees have for Lord Chaitanya, their desire to serve him and please him, and not have any restrictions that they want him to be happy. And if he's not happy, they would be unhappy. And anything that would cause them be unhappy, that would cause disturbance in them. It's like when Srivas Thakur, we mentioned him earlier, when his son died during the kirtan, he didn't bring it up because they knew if they stopped the kirtan, it would cause some disturbance. And so they would avoid even the most those activities that would cause some displeasure even in themselves. Typically, if you have one of your children die, it's not a happy situation. It's very sad. It's very distraught situation. But they didn't want it all to disturb Lord Chaitanya. So Srivas told his wife that you got to stop this crying and just not disturb this. But Lord Chaitanya always understands the mood of the devotees, and he knew there was something wrong. And then later he found out what happened. Then he said, well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you stop the kirtan? So this is the mood of the devotees. They don't want to disturb. This is how much their love and their bhakti is. And these are all symptoms of love. When you want someone to be happy, in all your activities and all your desires and all your engagements is just trying to make sure that person is happy. That's bhakti. That's love. Those are symptoms of love. That's bhava. When it's 100% pure, the stage of bhava, there's no impediments. Whatever impediments is also bhava. It's there for also the enjoyment, whether it's to create separation or to create situations where, like the mood of separation is there to also increase one's bhakti. Okay, let's keep reading. Number 9. Although Virabhadra Gosai was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he presented himself as a great devotee. Oh, I've just read that. 10. The main pillar in the hall of devotional service erected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He knew within himself that he acted as the Supreme Lord Vishnu, but externally he was prideless. It was by the glorious mercy of Sri Virabhadra Goswami that all the people in the world have now the chance to chant the names of Chaitanya and Nityananda. I therefore take shelter of the lotus feet of Virabhadra Goswami so that by his mercy, my great desire to write Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita will be properly guided. We haven't even really got into the pastimes yet here. It's all glorification. It's all sambandhana, who all the different individuals, who all these devotees are, and what their relationship is. This is all these chapters are explaining those things. 2 devotees of the Lord, Chaitanya, named Ram Das and Gadadhar Das, always lived with Sri Virabhadra Gosai. Purport. Sri Ram Das, later known as Abhiram Thakur, was one of the 12 Gopals, or cowherd boyfriends of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. The Gaura Ganadesh Dipika 126 states that Sri Ram Das was formerly Sridham. In the Bhakti Ratnakara, 4th wave, there is a description of Sri Abhiram Thakur. By the order of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, Abhiram Thakur became a great acharya and preacher of the Chaitanya cult of devotional service. He was a very influential personality, and non-devotees were very much afraid of him. Empowered by Sri Nityananda Prabhu, he was always in ecstasy and was extremely kind to all fallen souls. It said that if he offered obeisances to any stone other than Shalaram Shila, it would immediately fracture. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhash, 10 miles southwest of the Champa Danga railway station on the narrow gauge railway line from Howrah to Calcutta to Apta, a village in the Hooghly district, is a small town named Kyangula, Krishnanarga, where the temple in which Abhiram Thakur worshipped is situated. During the rainy season, when this area is inundated with water, people must go there by another line, which is now called the Southeastern Railway. On this line, there is a station named Kolagata, from which one has to go by steamer to Rani Chaka. 7.5 miles north of Rani Chaka is Kanakula. The temple where Abhiram Thakur worship is situated in Krishnanarga, which is near the Kulia bank of the Kanda. Therefore, the place is celebrated as Kanakula Krishnanarga. Outside the temple is a bakul tree. This place is known as Siddha Bakul Kunj. It is said that when Abhiram Thakur came there, he sat down under the tree. In Kanakula Krishnanarga, there is a big fair held every year in the month of Chaitra. That's March and April. On the Krishna Saptami, the seventh day of the dark moon, many hundreds and thousands of people gathered for this festival. The temple where Abhiram Thakur worshiped is has a very old history. The deity in the temple is known as Gopinath. There are many Savat families living near the temple. It is said that Abhiram Thakur had a whip, and that whoever he touched with it would immediately become elevated devotee of Krishna. Among his many disciples, Srivan Srinivasacharya was the most famous and most dear, but it was doubtful that he was his initiated disciple. 15. When Nityananda Prabhu was ordered to go to Bengal to preach, these two devotees, Sri Ram Das and Sri Gadadhar Das, were ordered to go with him. Thus, they were sometimes counted among the devotees of Lord Chaitanya and sometimes among the devotees of Lord Nityananda. Similarly, Madhava Ghosh and Vasudeva Ghosh belonged to both groups of devotees simultaneously. Purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhasha, there is a place named Dahihata near the Agradweep railway station in Patuli, in the district of Burdwan, where the deity of Sri Gopinath is still situated. This deity accepted Govinda Ghosh as his father, even until today. The deity performs the Shraddha ceremony on the anniversary of the death of Govinda Ghosh. The temple of the deity is managed by the Rajvamsa family of Krishnanarga, whose members are descendants of Raja Krishna Chandra. Every year in the month of Vaishakha, when there is a Baradola ceremony, this Gopinath deity is taken to Krishnanarga. The ceremony is performed with 11 other deities, and then Sri Gopinath is brought back to the temple of Agradweep. 16. Ramdas is one of the chief branches, was full of fraternal love of Godhead. He made a flute from a stick with 16 knots. Sri Gadadhar Das was always fully absorbed in ecstasy as a gopi in the house of Lord Nityananda, enacted the drama Danakeli. That's also a book that's available. Number 18. Sri Madhava Ghosh was a principal performer of kirtan. While he sang, Nityananda Prabhu danced. When Vasudeva Ghosh described Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda while performing kirtans, even wood and stone would melt upon hearing it. There were many extraordinary activities performed by Murari, a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes in his ecstasy he would slap the cheek of a tiger, and sometimes he would play with venomous snakes. Wow. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhasha, Murari Chaitanya Das was born in the village of Sar Vrindavanpur, which is situated about 2 miles from the Kalashi station on the Burdwan line. When Murari Chaitanya Das came to Navadweep, he settled in the village of Modadruma, or Mahagachigram. At that time, he became known as Saranga, or Saranga, Murari Chaitanya Das. The descendants of his family still reside in Saripada. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Anchakanda, chapter 5, there is the following statement. Murari Chaitanya Das had no material bodily features, for he was completely spiritual. Thus he would sometimes chase after tigers in the jungle and treat them just like cats and dogs. He would slap the cheek of a tiger and take a venomous snake on his lap. He had no fear for his external body, for which he was completely forgetful. He could spend all 24 hours a day chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra or speaking about Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. Sometimes he would remain submerged in water for 2 or 3 days, but he would feel no bodily inconvenience. Thus he behaved almost like stone or wood, but he always used his energy in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. No one can describe his specific characteristics, but it is understood that wherever Murari Chaitanya passed, whoever was present would be enlightened by Krishna consciousness simply by the atmosphere he created. This is a pure bhakti. Just getting around it, you get affected by it. 21. All the associates of Lord Nityananda were formerly cowherd boys in Rajabhumi. Their symbolic representations were the horns and sticks they carried, their cowherd dress, and the peacock plumes in their heads. Janamamata is also within the list of Lord Nityananda's followers. This is the purport, I'm sorry. She is described in the Gaur Gunadesh Dipika as Ananga Manjari of Vrindavan. All the devotees who are followers of Janamamata are counted within the list of Nityananda Prabhu's devotees. 22. The physician Raghunath, also known as Upadhyaya, was so great a devotee that simply by seeing him one would awaken his dormant love of Godhead. You could just imagine this being there at this time with all these Nitya Siddhas, and there's a lot of Sadhaka Siddhas mixed with these devotees. It's not. I've never heard of any possibility of getting there, but I know if I ever got there, it would accelerate my Krishna consciousness to get to, that planet where Krishna's pastimes are going on. But you can see just to be in this atmosphere, like I described, just being in this, living in the same town, or just walking by these individuals, the mercy, how purifying it is. So that sometimes I don't know. I guess our path to Krishna consciousness is through Gaura Leela, and we have these books. We have all this information that we're having about the Leela. Everything we're doing in our Krishna consciousness now is emulating from Lord Chaitanya. And it's described sometimes. It's often they describe this as often these words a storehouse of, and they use these terms like a marketplace. Like Lord Chaitanya, when he traveled after he was going to go to Vrindavan, his first attempt. When he was in Varanasi, he said he tried to distribute love of Godhead. He has this, so he went out in the marketplace, but nobody would take. There was nobody there. There was all Mayavadis. He wanted to give it away for free. And also, we have Rupa Goswami describe it as if you find lobha or greed anywhere in the marketplace, you should get it immediately. Purchase it immediately if you can find it. And actually, a pastime when Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, this is in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, when they came first and they saw Lord Chaitanya and they offered their obeisances at a distance and they had straw in their teeth and they were surrendering to Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya told them, you surrender to Advaita Acharya. You had to be there with him. So you should surrender. Often he would show the devotees the importance of Dvaitacharya and Nityananda both. So they both surrendered to Dvaita, and then Dvaita bestowed the love of God to both of them, Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. Okay, I think that's enough for today. We ended at text 23. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. But Advaita said that I'm just a shopkeeper. You're the proprietor of the warehouse. You're the owner of this marketplace. Okay.